Hi, I'm Geordie.
And I'm Sam.
And welcome back to our channel.
And today we're going to be doing our favourite / underrated player from each club.
Yeah, so without any further ado,
let's get started. So, for the first team in the Adelaide Crows, I think the most underrated player is actually Taylor Walker. I think he's put a few good seasons together, but they still, have a go at him for not performing in some games. So, yeah.
So for the Brisbane Lions, we chose to pick Lachie Neale because he has underrated most seasons except for this year because he won the Brownlow medal, but he could also be classified as one of our favourite players from Brisbane, so that's why we picked him.
So the next player on our list is Patrick Cripps. I think we picked him because when he went to Carlton, he was in a pretty tough spot because Carlton weren't the best, and he's starting to put them into finals contention. So that's why I think that Cripps is one of our favourite players from Carlton.
So for Collingwood, we couldn't really pick a player that was sort of underrated because they're all pretty good. So we picked Scott Pendlebury because he's one of our favourites.
So for Essendon, one of our favourites underrated is Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti, and we picked him because every time he plays, he just brings a new element of fun to the game and surprises you with what he can do. So that's why he's one of our favourites.
So, for Fremantle, we couldn't really pick one that was underrated again. So we just picked Nat Fyfe because he's a really good player and he's probably the best player in the Fremantle side right now.
For Geelong, we're going to go with Joel Selwood just because he always puts his head over the ball and he puts the team first. Doesn't matter if he gets injured, he can still get the ball.
So, for Gold Coast, it was really hard for us to pick a player. So we picked one that was sort of underrated and also one of our favourites, and that is Isaac Rankin.
From GWS, we're going to go with Phil Davis. He's the former captain of GWS, and he's a good player for 90% of the year, so that's why we're going to put him on our list.
So for Hawthorn, it took us a while to find a player as well because we couldn't really find one. But we picked one that we got a lot of free cards off this year, and that was James Worpel. He had a pretty good season, and he's slightly underrated as a young player for that side, so that is why we picked him.
Melbourne, there's a few good players in Melbourne and a few terrible ones, but we've gone with Max Gawn. He's probably the best ruckman in the competition for probably the last 2 years. And yeah, so we're going to go Max Gawn.
So we know this player has already been traded from North Melbourne, but we picked him anyways because he had a really good season and he was quite underrated in the North Melbourne side, and that is Ben Brown. He had a particularly good season and he's had a few very good seasons, and it's sad to see him leave North Melbourne, but we're excited to see what he does in his new club.
So from Port Adelaide, we're going to go Darcy Byrne-Jones because he's very underrated and he's one of our favourites in general. But at the start of the year, he was putting some good games together and he didn't get... People weren't talking about him or anything. They were still putting him down, saying that he wasn't good, but he came out with All-Australian and he also won the Club Best and Fairest. So, yeah.
So for Richmond, there is a whole heap of really good players that are in that side, and we just had to pick one, and so we picked Bachar Hurley purely because he's quite underrated in that
He
side.
gets left out of the talk between Dustin Martin, Tom Lynch, and those kind of guys. That's why we put him in this list. So For St Kilda this year, we're going to go with Paddy Ryder. We think that he's going to have had a good year this year, but he kind of falls off
The rails a little bit.
as he goes further on that team. So I don't think he'll be as good as he is this year for next year. Right.
So this player also has already left Sydney for another club, but he had a pretty good season, so we
Underrated.
We put him on this list, and that is Aliyah Halia. He had a really good season in 2020, and we can't wait to see what he does in 2021 at his new club.
So from West Coast, we're going to go Dom Sheed. A couple years ago, he won them a grand final with a kick, with about 2 minutes left, I think it was. And you didn't hear much about him before that, well, I hadn't anyway. And for him to, stand up in the grand final and win it, I think that's pretty good.
So our last one is from the Western Bulldogs, and you can't really pass Marcus Bontempelli. He had a pretty good season this year, and he has a pretty good season last year too. He's quite underrated in that side as well, and he's also one of our favourites. So that's the ultimate reason why we picked him.
Comment below who your favourite players from your club or even a few clubs.
Thank you guys so much for watching.
Remember to like, comment and subscribe.
And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.